Welcome back to Fast Market here on the TD Ameritrade Network. Let's bring in our next guest for our cash tag segment. That's going to be Andy Swan, co-founder at LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Andy.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we're talking the consumer. We got a great confidence number this morning. American Express got hammered after their earnings. Maybe some, a canary in the coal mine here in this space, but it seems like the swipes are still coming for Visa. What kind of data do you guys have out of LikeFolio?
Yeah, I think, with Visa, it's there's kind of two different ways to look at this as there is, any trade or any investment idea. But with Visa, we are seeing the one negative, I would say, is, we're seeing a significant uptick in the number of people talking about their credit card being maxed out or running out of credit. Which not only puts a damper on the spending that they can do, but it also is an indicator, excuse me, that they may be, defaulting on their credit soon, which is much more American Express's problem than it is Visa's, because American Express actually carries some of that debt. Visa generally passes all of that risk, excuse me, on to banks. But the three things I think Visa has going for it, are really quite compelling. Number one, we're seeing a really nice, solid increase in consumer demand for Visa's products. These are cards they have branded with other companies and banks. The Crypto.com partnership we see has been really successful. They're becoming kind of the credit card of choice for crypto enthusiasts. I think that's a pretty cool thing that's going for them. And the second, probably more importantly, is travel demand. We're seeing a lot of people talking about travel, especially international. This is opening up a lot more transaction volume for Visa, especially. This is a card that's used really worldwide, and we think transaction volume will drive most of this quarter's profitability growth. And then third is just this track record Visa has of pretty positive results. If you look over the past 4 quarters, there's been only one downtick during an earnings week for Visa. That was the quarter that was a year ago. Otherwise, we saw a 9% increase, we saw a 3% increase, and then really a flat reaction last quarter. This quarter's anticipated move is 3.5% or so, either up or down. So we think this is probably a potential opportunity where you've got a somewhat limited downside and the likelihood of a beat going into this. I think Visa's worth a shot to the long side with a small risk profile.
Andy, one of the things you mentioned, they're not a bank, right? Even though it's a Visa and it could be a credit card or a debit card, they're not the bank. The risk is to the banks, not Visa. They are just a payment processor. So, but they still have, if people are getting closer to their max limit, they're going to do less, right? Those swipes are going to decrease. The overall U.S. consumer, if it doesn't stay strong, they're sensitive to that. But really, Andy, isn't this company becoming just a mature fintech company that not a lot of growth, but a lot of earnings, healthy dividend if they pay it, that. And this is a company just cruising along here, growing at a nice pace. And frankly, when I think about Visa versus MasterCard, they seem to be a higher profile name than MasterCard. Yeah. So give us your thoughts. What's the number one thing that we need to watch? Is it consumer spending? Because I don't think they worry about the debt too much. That's the bank's problem.
I agree. I think, the amount of consumer debt really, I think, impacts a certain segment of the population more than it impacts another, and it's the second one, the prolific spenders, those that don't have significant debt concerns, those are the ones that drive a vast majority of the transaction volume through Visa's channels. So I think that side of the economy is doing very well and could more than lift the burden of what's happening at the lower side of the economy. I also think Visa's just done a very, very good job of execution. They have created partnerships. They've created more and more places for their cards to be used, more and more banks that they're working with. And again, even some fintech up-and-comers, Visa is the one that's winning those deals. And so I think this is one of those companies that, while it's not really sexy and you don't think of it necessarily in the fintech digital wallet space, it really is. And this is a company that's executing technologically to distribution-wise at a very high level. And so I think, Visa's one. Anytime you get a significant pullback in Visa, it should be on your watch list to add, because this is a really well-run company.
Andy, 55.7% of their revenue comes from international markets. We've all seen that boom in travel. So is that the caveat for this one going into this earnings report? And what score do you guys have?
Yeah, I think that international travel will probably be the thing that can get Visa over the finish line in terms of posting a good number and having a somewhat optimistic outlook. And for this earnings report, I would say somewhat optimistic is the way that we would play it. I think that the most likely reaction is a positive one. And if we do get a negative reaction, I think it would probably be quite limited. So I like the risk reward of a bullish play here, but I really think you got to be careful about how much you're willing to risk. I'll leave that to you guys. You always do a great job with that.
Andy, you mentioned earlier the credit card debt that people are taking on, but we're not seeing that show up. So consumer credit expanding pretty rapidly, but we're not seeing any defaults, like these charge-offs at these credit card companies. Have you guys seen anything in your data where that's starting to tick up? Because that's actually been pretty low, even though balances are rising.
Yeah, it has been low. I think, when we look at our data, the number of people talking about getting close to that max on their credit card, I think is a, potential future indicator of those defaults. It has been somewhat historically. There's not a whole lot of data there to go off of, but I do think that could be a precursor to bad things to come. But again, Visa, unlike some others, doesn't really have to worry about that. They kind of carry the burden for a matter of seconds.
Yeah, I'm really curious about guidance going in, how that consumer feels with those balances if they keep swiping, because that's how Visa makes all their dough.
Well, we just got a consumer confidence number, and it was off the charts.
They're not going to stop swiping. All right, Andy, great stuff as always. Thanks for the data.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that's Andy Swan, co-founder at LikeFolio, breaking down the Visa data.
Now, do we have any data that might show consumer confidence? Oh, right here, actually, right on my piece of paper.
I let off with that, too.
Yeah.
So just off 52-week highs here, Kevin, volatility never really explodes in MasterCard or Visa.
It's not a big premium name.
But how